Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
I am alone here sometime. I'm scared to be alone in the office.
A cafe in Surrey is shot up for a third time, and police say it appears to be linked to extortion. Plus,
the job is to save lives and prevent serious injuries from occurring on the road.
From engineers to psychologists,
I design roads,
set speed limits, time traffic signals,
roads to mines. More public sector workers hit the picket lines as unions battled the BC government for new contracts. And
she was having a problem with her leg, and then she gave all the time medical reports and everything, but I think they were not supporting her in any way.
Family and colleagues of a janitor who died on the job at SFU say it's time for better working conditions.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. For the third time now, someone has opened fire on a cafe in Surrey. It's owned by a prominent Indian celebrity, and police say it appears to be another case of extortion. The CBC's Yasmin Khanea shows us the latest violence that has people rattled.
It's a sound that's become all too familiar for this community. Video verified by CBC News shows someone shooting multiple bullets at this cafe. It happened just before 4 a.m. Thursday. Staff were inside at the time, but no one was hurt.
And at this point in time, I will say that there are earmarks of extortion, but allow the investigators to do their work and make that ultimate determination.
The same cafe was also shot at twice over the summer. Surrey police say there have been 65 reported extortion-related cases and more than 30 connected shootings so far this year.
We have a daycare right across the street. If this had happened during the day, potentially children could have been shot.
The cafe is owned by famed Indian comedian and TV host Kapil Sharma. Indian media is reporting that people who say they are members of the Bishnoi gang are claiming responsibility for the shooting on social media, but CBC News has not verified those claims. The Bishnoi gang, based in northern India, has been linked to violence, intimidation, and extortion, primarily targeting South Asian businesses across Canada. The federal government listed it as a terrorist entity last month.
I think everybody who lives in Surrey is feeling their safety is threatened, especially if you happen to be of South Asian descent.
On Sunday, a woman was shot while she slept inside this home in what police believe is the first extortion-related injury in the city.
That until it's dealt with, it's going to keep happening.
There has been some progress on the issue of extortion. Earlier this month, 7 men were charged in relation to 3 separate cases, but many in the community are still anxious. Yasmin Khanea, CBC News, Surrey, BC.
The Prime Minister, meanwhile, has now announced plans to get tougher on crime. Mark Carney says his government is going to amend the current law surrounding bail and sentencing for many types of violent crimes, changes that echo what the Conservative opposition has long been calling for. Lisa Shing has the details.
We're strengthening the criminal code.
A promise to crack down on crime from Prime Minister Mark Carney.
It's too easy for repeated violent offenders to quickly get back on the street, sometimes back into the same communities that they just committed crimes in.
The Liberal government says it will introduce legislation next week that will make violent and repeat offenders charged with home invasions, assault, or human trafficking prove they deserve bail. The changes to the criminal code will also allow for consecutive sentences for many serious crimes, restrict conditional sentences for sexual offenses, and impose harsher penalties for organized retail theft. Carney also said his government will hire 1,000 new RCMP officers. The Conservatives have been pushing for bail reform for years. Opposition leader Pierre Poilievre said his plan, a private member's bill already tabled in Parliament, is better.
We're going to bring in 3 strikes, you're out. 3 serious offenses, an offender will go to jail for 10 years with no chance of parole, probation, house arrest, or bail.
Flo Bellman and her husband Paul Henderson have been calling for these measures for years, ever since their daughter Darian was shot dead 5 years ago. Her ex-boyfriend has been charged with first-degree murder. He was out on bail when the crime was committed.
If the system had done what it was supposed to do, Darian would be alive today. She would still be with us.
She would, for
We
sure.
believe that. And this is why it's so important for change to come.
But others say Carney's plan won't make meaningful change.
We don't even have basic numbers, like how many people allegedly committed new offenses while on bail, what offenses those were. And so without that information, we're stuck in a cycle of making policy by soundbite or anecdote rather than evidence.
We need to recognize that allocating resources to social services to assist these individuals will make all of us safer.
But for these parents who lost their daughter to violence, any change that can save a life is meaningful. Lisa Sheng, CBC News, Toronto.
More BC public workers are hitting the picket lines. This time, it's licensed professionals, from geologists to psychologists. As Katie DeRosa explains, their union warns major government projects in this province could be delayed.
Week 7 on the picket line, a major escalation.
Every government licensed professional in the province of British Columbia will be on strike.
More than 1,600 geologists, engineers, foresters, mining inspectors, and psychologists who work with children in care are now off the job. They're all members of the Professional Employees Association. It has been on strike alongside the BC General Employees Union since September 2nd. The association's executive director says their job action will lead to costly delays for bridges, roads, and mines.
So when you think of engineers building bridges and maintaining highway infrastructure.
Striking workers say their jobs are crucial.
And literally, my job is to save lives and prevent serious injuries from occurring on the road.
I do things like set speed limits, time traffic signals.
I design roads, and that's a really important part of provincial infrastructure. People use ministry roads. Almost everybody uses a ministry road every day of their life.
The union says the government's offer remains unchanged, a 3.5% wage hike over 2 years.
We showed up ready to bargain and find solutions, but the BC government came empty-handed.
As for the BCGEU, it has not met with the province since the end of September. Finance Minister Brenda Bailey was not available for an interview, but she's insisted the government's offer is strong and realistic given the $12 billion deficit. 25,000 public service workers are now on strike, and the BCGEU warns more will walk out. The strike has already effectively shut down the provincial liquor distribution system, which has left bars and restaurants thirsty for booze. Just one of the many sectors hoping for an end to a labor dispute which has dragged out for nearly 2 months. Katie DeRosa, CBC News, Victoria.
The strikes have also forced Student Aid BC's online application systems offline, and payments are being delayed. That is leaving students who rely on loans in a tough spot. Still, some say they support the job action.
I want them to come to the table and make a fair deal. I think that's what anyone wants. I think it's easy to point fingers and say, well, I wish the people would just go back to work. But it's like, if they're taking pay cuts to themselves to even be out on the picket line, and if they're not willing to fight for something hard, they wouldn't be doing that, right?
Robbins is a geology student at the University of Victoria. She says since she might work in the public sector one day, she hopes the job action leads to long-term change. Meanwhile, thousands of other public workers are taking job action across the province. In Squamish, about 250 Canadian Union of Public Employees Workers, CUPE, have been embroiled in a labour dispute since October 2nd. The District of Squamish has now issued a lockout of the 2269 branch workers. In Northeast BC, CUPE workers there are threatening rotating job action. The 1699 branch represents more than 100 employees in the regional district of Fraser-Fort George. And the Canadian Union of Postal Workers strike continues now on a rotating basis, affecting 2 BC cities, Dawson Creek and Fort St. John. The federal government has formally announced the transfer of almost 195 acres of land to the Snuneymuxw Reserve lands on Vancouver Island. It marks an important step in the nation's self-determination. As Claire Palmer reports, the transfer was decades in the making.
It's a day of celebration for the Snuneymuxw First Nation. Their village of Tedaxin returned at last.
Nearly 200 years of big work and persistence led us here today. Get emotional. Just thinking of our old people.
Without land, there's not that opportunity for economic development in community. There's not that opportunity for more housing in community. So that's where I want to continue to accelerate the process to transfer the lands as quick as we can.
The negotiations date back to the Harper government, when Chief Weiss's mother, Viola, started negotiations.
We always fall back on the work that she started. It feels like we're bringing some of these items across the finish line for her.
This land may not look like much now, but the Snuneymuxw have big plans for it. A vision that includes developing housing, commercial space, and other economic development opportunities. He says Snuneymuxw have the lowest per capita reserve land base in BC, with this land transfer offering an exciting opportunity for people to come home.
I'd like to see some homes. I'd like to see some economic development for our community. And like I say, we've been living on top of each other on IRs 1 to 4 for generations. So to see the expansion of our lands and home development is going to be groundbreaking for us.
The nation will hold a vote in December to decide what to do with the land. Claire Palmer, CBC News, Nanaimo.
Family and colleagues of a custodian who died while working at SFU's Burnaby campus are calling on the university to improve working conditions. As Michelle Gassoub shows us, they allege an increasing workload and poor conditions contributed to her death.
Kulbir Kella worked as a cleaner at SFU for 20 years. On July 28th, while on shift at the university's Burnaby campus, the 61-year-old suffered a heart attack in a hallway and died. Her family is alleging that being overworked contributed to her death.
I don't think it was humanely possible to do that for one single person.
Today, colleagues and advocates gathered on campus in her honor, saying since a series of layoffs in March, the workload for cleaning staff has increased dramatically.
I think the company needs to reevaluate and re-examine the workload. The workload was very immense, and they had many areas to cover, and it involved a lot of moving from different buildings.
Her niece says Kella was increasingly struggling at work and had asked her employer for help.
She was having a problem with her leg, and then she gave all the time medical reports and everything, but I think they were not supporting her in any way.
In a statement, SFU called the death tragic, but said any questions about the working conditions of cleaning staff should be directed to Best Service Pros, the third-party company that SFU contracts out. Best Service Pros did not respond to a CBC News request for comment. QP Local 3338, the union representing cleaning staff, are calling on the university to stop using third-party contractors.
Many of these workers are marginalized, immigrants, women, people of color, those working very physically demanding jobs who are over 50.
The family also calling for increased first aid training and improved communication on campus for medical emergencies, and hope the loss of Kella will inspire change.
This is a very serious matter, not only for this, company, all the companies, all across BC, all across Canada.
In an industry where they say workers can feel invisible. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Burnaby.
Darius Madavi joins us for a glance at the weather. We keep talking about rain coming in, but we have to keep an update on the drought.
That's right. We could really use that rain, especially in the southern interior and the Peace region, which remain very dry. The southern interior has seen some improvement since last week. You can see that in the green here, especially in the Okanagan, improving by 1 drought level. So that is something. But if we continue to get that rain into next week, hopefully we'll see even more improvement. We are seeing those snow levels climb as well. This is the snow depth modeled on the different mountain peaks across BC. And as you can see, it is expected to grow quite significantly, that snowpack, as we see these next systems roll in. We've seen the beginnings of one of them. The next one arrives on Saturday. More later in the show.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Alleged information leaks, rampant resignations, and more. How a village on Vancouver Island is trying to sue 2 of its councillors after years of discontent. Justin McElroy has that story next. City of Vancouver has announced the completion of the False Creek Neighborhood Energy Utility Expansion Project. It now provides heat and hot water to buildings in southeast False Creek, parts of Mount Pleasant, and the False Creek Flats.
The idea behind the NEU is simple but brilliant. It captures heat from wastewater, yes, even raw sewage, and turns it into dependable energy sources for homes and businesses. And so that's the kind of practical innovation that keeps our city moving forward.
Sims says the city received more than $10 million for the project from the Clean BC Fund and more than $1 million from the Green Municipal Fund. The village of Sayward on Vancouver Island is taking legal action so that it has the ability to potentially sue 2 of its own councillors. It's the latest in a long-running dispute that has paralyzed the town's basic ability to function for years. Our Justin McElroy has followed this story closely and explains what this newest legal action is all about.
The legal filing from the village of Sayward alleges that 2 councillors, Scott Burchett and Sue Polson, have been illegally leaking confidential information and collaborating with a former chief administrative officer of the village to criticize the ethics of the mayor and other senior staff on a local Facebook page. Now, the mayor is also suing that same former staffer for defamation, which means only 2 of the 5 people on Sayward's council aren't in a conflict of interest over the series of lawsuits and investigations. Now, on a 5-person council in BC law, you need at least 3 people able to vote on any decision. So Sayward is asking the BC Supreme Court to temporarily reduce that number to 2 so the village can vote and take action potentially against those councillors. Now, it's important to note that the allegations laid out by the village against the councillors have not been proven in court, but it's the latest in a back and forth between the 2 sides that has steadily increased in allegations and potential legal bills for the village of about 300 people north of Campbell River. You know, in the last 6 years, there have been 7 chief administrative officers. 2 more councillors resigned last year. It's an ugly situation that is getting uglier.
What are both sides saying about this case, and what does it matter to people perhaps beyond Sayward?
Yeah, I reached out to Councillor Burchett and the communications firm representing the village of Sayward. Nobody will go on the record at this point, given the complexity of the case and the overlapping legal action and investigations that are ongoing. But it's worth following, I think, for 3 reasons. One is there are a number of municipalities where mayors and councillors are suing each other or involved in disputes that place them in potential conflict. So it will be interesting to see if the court decides rules can change, which could make it easier for municipalities to go ahead with action against their own elected officials. The second part of this is another example of an issue we see in BC municipalities, where councillors and mayors sue and investigate each other, but there's no mechanism for the community to resolve things before the next general election. The province has promised legislation to try and deal with this situation in the future, but for now, places like Sayward are having to sort things out themselves, mostly through increasing lawsuits. And the third is about people making serious allegations about the public and private behavior of elected officials on a popular community Facebook page. Some of these comments are what triggered the defamation suit from the mayor and formed the basics of the conflict of interest with him. Now, similar social media disputes are happening in a number of towns. These sorts of legal challenges, messy as they are, help set rules in future disputes that will inevitably play out on rant and rave pages across the province.
Right. Municipal Affairs reporter Justin McElroy, thanks very much. The number of home sales across Canada dropped last month for the first time since April. That's despite the Bank of Canada's interest rate cut in September. The Canadian Real Estate Association says nationwide, home sales were down 1.7% last month compared to August. That drop was due to lower sales here in Greater Vancouver, as well as Calgary, Edmonton, Ottawa, and Montreal, which offset sales increases in the Greater Toronto area, as well as Winnipeg. CREA also says the average cost of a Canadian home in September was just over $676,000. That's down about 3.5% from a year earlier. A rather spectacular morning in Whistler Village. The sky bathed in orange, matching the changing leaves below. There is some rain on the way, though. Darius has your weather next.
I'm Stephen Quinn, and I love living here in Vancouver, BC. It's a city with world-renowned beauty, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows. In our new daily podcast, This is Vancouver, we're exploring the diverse range of issues and stories in the city, the good, the bad, and everything in between, as told by the people who live it every day. Don't miss This is Vancouver, available wherever you get your podcasts, and I'll talk to you soon.
It has hockey's winningest ever team and a ton of charm. But Montreal is watching a lot of people leave town. As Sarah Levitt explains, projections indicate the exodus will reach more than 6 figures over the next 5 years.
So as we come in, we're going to have the nice mudroom.
Elliot Dumas is ready for the big move. He used to live in Montreal, but now, alongside his girlfriend, they're building their dream home in Saint-Sauveur, about an hour out of the city.
Fresh air, more space, again, affordability. And I always wanted to, if ever we raise a family, to raise it in an easier environment.
Dumas is not alone, and as a real estate agent, he says there's a reoccurring theme for why others leave the city for country life.
Affordability. So, you can, in many cases, you can have a house for the price of a 2-bedroom condo in Montreal.
More and more families are leaving Montreal. According to Quebec's Statistics Institute, more than 120,000 Montrealers are projected to move to other regions in the province by 2030. Experts say the cost of living and lack of housing are big reasons why. While rents in Vancouver and Toronto remain higher, low rents in Montreal are a thing of the past. The average rent for a 2-bedroom apartment has gone up 71% since 2019. Young, middle-class couples may buy a condo, but then...
When you want to have 2 or 3 kids, usually the possibilities in Montreal are less common than in the suburbs.
Yeah, I'm sad to leave this place.
For Guillaume Nicodème and his wife, who rented this apartment in Montreal for the past 10 years, the move out to the eastern townships wasn't their first choice.
It's getting so expensive that we are at mortgage price. Closer to that feels weird, yeah, it feels strange, and I'm kind of sad about that part.
There are, though, growing pains to population growth in some rural areas. Certain towns in the Laurentians have halted development permits because current water and sewage infrastructures can't handle that many residents. Dumas says, though, they're catching up, and he encourages others to try out the country.
It's just easier life, I would say, in general.
A different kind of living that puts less strain on the wallet. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Saint-Sauveur.
Gold has long been regarded as a very safe haven for investors, and it's once again drawing their attention. Andrew Chang explains why gold is on the rise, even as stock markets boom.
Gold is valuable, but right now it's crazy valuable. Worth more today than it ever has in history. And it's made these astronomical gains in a shockingly short period of time.
The value of gold rise to a record high this week. It is the biggest rally since the 1970s.
At the time I record this, you can buy an ounce of gold for just over $4,100 US. An ounce, just for reference, is just a bit more than what this AA battery weighs. And we know, as far as investments go, gold is relatively safe, right? I mean, there's only so much of it to go around, unlike paper money, which we can just keep printing. So when the price of gold spikes, that tells you investors are looking for safe places to park their money.
Investors are looking for an inflation hedge. They're worried about the huge debts that are being run up by major economies around the world as a result of rising inflation. Investors are going to need a safe haven, and gold is one of those possibilities.
Why would they be looking for safety right now, you ask, especially when the stock market's been shooting up? Well, because it's a little too shooty-uppy right now. The AI boom is really distorting things, and it's more of a stock driver right now than a real economic driver. I'm not saying it's a bubble, but maybe it's bubbly. And so, while investors keep riding the high, they also know nothing lasts forever.
Markets tumbled after China imposed export controls on rare earth minerals, and U.S. President Donald Trump responded with a 100% tariff on Chinese goods.
I think an awful lot of what we're seeing is about fear right now. If you think about gold as a mirror onto the rest of the world, you could really describe it as being the sum of all fears, whether they be geopolitical or economic.
So there's that. But also think about what's happening to the US dollar. Donald Trump wants a weaker dollar.
When we have a strong dollar, one thing happens, it sounds good. But you don't do any tourism, you can't sell tractors, you can't sell trucks, you can't sell anything. But you make a hell of a lot more money with a weaker dollar, not a weak dollar, but a weaker dollar than you do with a strong dollar.
And Trump's big, beautiful bill, which experts figure will add several $1 trillion to the national debt over the next 10 or so years, More debt equals more dollars flowing in the economy equals more inflation equals a weaker dollar. And here's why that affects the price of gold. One, gold is priced in US dollars. So when the value of a dollar goes down, it just takes more of them to buy an ounce of gold. But with all the uncertainty in the US economy right now, trade policy forever turning on a dime, runaway deficits, the government shutdown, yeah, you're gonna have investors who think, not sure where the economy's going right now. Gold looks awfully good right now. And that includes central banks around the world.
As you see sovereigns around the world, as you see central banks around the world, as you see individual investors around the world go, you know what? I now view gold as a safe harbor asset in a way that the dollar used to be viewed.
They've been hoovering up gold, just sucking it right up lately, like there's no tomorrow, globally buying billions of dollars in gold just in the last couple of months. That also raises the price. Some people are forecasting as high as $5,000 an ounce by next year. And gold is one of those funny assets where casual investors like you and me don't always think to buy it when its value is tanking. We see the price going up and our eyes light up, which keeps the good times going, reinforcing what we've known all along, that long term, the price of gold has only ever really gone in one direction.
Officials at Vancouver Coastal Health say drug users are changing their habits, and that could be responsible for a drop in drug-related deaths. Dr. Mark Lysician is the Deputy Chief Medical Health Officer at VCH. He's here with more details from the coroner and the health authority. Dr. Lysician, first of all, what has changed with how people are using drugs?
Well, over the past few years, we've seen that increasingly people are inhaling illicit drugs rather than injecting them. And in parallel with that, over the past couple of years, we've seen also that overdose mortality rates have actually been decreasing here in BC, in neighboring Alberta, and actually across North America. And some people wonder if, this change in mode of consumption might be driving that decrease in overdose deaths.
Now, to clarify, how does smoking versus injecting change drug-related outcomes, if we can call them that?
Yeah, well, when you inhale a drug, you tend to take sort of little breaths of the drug. So you take little sips of it, and you're able to titrate its effect better than when you inject it. It's kind of an awkward process to inject drugs, particularly when you're, in the street or somewhere like that. And so you tend to take the whole dose all at once. And once you've taken it, you can't take it back. And so the risk of overdose is theoretically higher that way.
Is there any difference for those who are using drugs when it comes to beyond the dangers of using the drugs that perhaps, if we can call them side effects, whether it's if you're experiencing infections from a needle source rather than, for example, breathing respiratory problems from using a pipe?
Yeah, I mean, definitely injecting is associated with kinds of skin infections, bone infections, heart valve infections. And so if you're inhaling, you're not placing yourself at risk of those types of problems. Now, it is possible that you're exposing yourself to new types of problems, and those are problems of the respiratory system. And that's, something that people right now are trying to study because we just don't know as much about the long-term effects of inhaling opioid drugs like fentanyl.
How do you think our policymakers, should this information adjust their approach now, if in fact it is a drug user's method of use that is affecting the numbers of people who are killed by drugs?
Well, we've had to change the way we respond to the problem. Initially we offered supervised injection sites like Insight, but as people have shifted to inhalation, we've had to offer overdose prevention sites offering supervised inhalation services. And so we have to often do that in environments where we have an indoor space to have supervised injection and then an outdoor space where we can provide supervised inhalation services, because it's hard to offer those inside without kind of big expensive renovations. And so about half of our overdose prevention sites here in the VCH region now offer supervised inhalation services. But yeah, as people change the way they use drugs, we have to change the way we offer services as well.
Are there any other major takeaways that the public and policymakers ought to think deeply about, given these findings?
Well, another thing is that there's been a lot in the news and places like that about public drug use recently. And we think that this shift to inhaling drugs is actually increasing public drug use because it's harder to use drugs by inhalation if you're smoking in a lot of indoor environments because smoking is banned. There's smoking detectors and alarms. And so that pushes people to do it outside. Which is leading to this observation, but it may also be increasing the safety for people who use drugs because if you have an overdose outside and somebody sees you, they can call 911 or they can administer naloxone. But if you're using drugs behind closed doors, then it's hard for people to help you. So, this might be driving the trend of why there's more public drug use, but it may also be increasing safety for people who use drugs.
Dr. Mark Lasishin, Deputy Chief Medical Health Officer at VCH, we appreciate your time and your expertise. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no problem.
We go to the Middle East next. Israel and Hamas continue to accuse each other of violating that ceasefire as Israeli settlements continue to displace Palestinians in the West Bank. How some Canadians are reacting after this. Former U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton has been indicted on charges of mishandling classified information. Bolton worked in the first Trump administration and has since become a vocal critic of the president. Bolton is accused of transmitting and retaining national defense information. His lawyer says his client did not unlawfully share or store any data. The news comes on the heels of indictments against other perceived adversaries of Trump, including former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James. Bolton served for more than a year before Trump fired him in 2019. A wave of Russian drones and missile attacks targeted Ukraine's gas facilities overnight. Emergency officials say residential buildings and other businesses were also damaged in the attack. Kyiv says Moscow launched more than 300 drones and dozens of missiles aimed at infrastructure across the country. Russian attacks have triggered a major disruption to Ukraine's energy grid and forced power cuts in all regions. Its cash-strapped government is in talks with allies to raise money to import more fuel for the cold winter months. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is set to meet with Donald Trump in Washington on Friday to seek more support for its war against Russia. Donald Trump, meanwhile, has issued a new threat to Hamas amid continuing bloodshed between the militant group and armed clans. This all comes as Israel and the militant group continue to accuse each other of violating the ceasefire, and tensions rise over the delayed return of hostage remains. Tom Barry has more from Cairo.
We're hearing a lot of anger still coming out of Israel over Hamas's failure to deliver the remains of all 28 deceased Israeli hostages that it had been holding in Gaza. Hamas has so far returned the bodies of just 9 Israeli hostages. It says that's really all it can do at this point. It says the devastation in Gaza makes it very difficult to track down individual bodies. It's asked for help and special equipment to try to track down the remaining Israeli hostages who have died. Now, Israel says that that's just not good enough. They say that this amounts to Hamas breaching the terms of the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas. We heard Benjamin Netanyahu today talking about how he is determined to get the bodies of all Israeli hostages back. And this really has bled over into the attempts to get more aid into Gaza. Right now, you've got 2 entrances from Israel into Gaza in which aid is flowing through there. Aid trucks are getting into Gaza. Food and medicine and supplies are being delivered. I was speaking today with an aid worker in Gaza who says that there's a sense of cautious optimism there, but there's also a sense that really the efforts need to be stepped up. Now, the United Nations has said it wants to see all entrances into Gaza opened up, and that includes the Rafah crossing, which goes from Egypt into Gaza. Right now, the Israelis are saying that they will open up Rafah at some point to people going back and forth. So that means a lot of people coming out of Gaza to get medical treatment in Egypt. The issue is the Israelis are saying that they will not allow humanitarian assistance to go into Gaza.
We're all advocating for opening the crossings, facilitating our access inside Gaza, making sure there is law and order so people can actually also move freely inside the Gaza Strip and be able to reach the distribution points and make sure that they're able to feel safe while moving around.
So all passages into Gaza need to be opened up. That's not the case right now. But as I say, the United Nations aid groups say that's got to happen. They say the people in Gaza need all the help they can get. Tom Perry, CBC News, Cairo.
As pressure builds on that ceasefire in Gaza, settler violence in the West Bank against Palestinians continues unabated. Ioanna Remiliotis with the Fifth Estate shows us how Israeli settlements are still getting support from some Canadian charities despite violating international law.
In the West Bank, a familiar scene plays out. Khadr and Fatima Nawaja say they were sleeping outside on their farm in the Palestinian village of Susia to get some respite from the August heat. They woke to Israeli settlers attacking them.
اعتدوا علي أنا من يوم ما صحيت من النوم بالحجار يعني مش حجار بسيطة بعد احتاج الحجار بالعصي يعني
مش قادر لا أضرب ولا دافع عن حالي ولا أدافع عن جوزي إيدي نازلة ذكرت إن بنتي نايمة في الغرفة.
The United Nations says settler violence against Palestinians in the West Bank has surged since the Hamas attack of October 7th, 2023.
Here the home of Khadr.
Nasser Nawaja shows us where his relatives were struck. He says attacks are often met with impunity because Israeli soldiers do little, if anything, to stop them.
Nobody help us, nobody save us.
Canada condemns the escalating violence, as well as the expansion of Israeli settlements, including here in Susia, which are considered illegal under international law. Details of filings sent by Canadian charities to the Canada Revenue Agency reveal millions of charitable dollars are supporting settlements and Israeli military personnel, contrary to public policy.
Canada promotes the idea of Palestinian human rights, and Israeli settlements in the occupied territories violate all of these principles.
In one example, we were offered a Canadian tax receipt for donating towards an Israeli settlement, also called Susia, that is near the Nawajas village, even though the funds were solicited by an Israeli entity called the Har Hebron Fund, which Canada sanctioned last year for its role in facilitating settler violence. After we asked to interview the organizations involved, we got an email informing us our donation was taken in error and would be refunded. The charities we reached out to turned down or ignored our requests for interviews. Meanwhile, critics question why Canadians are still getting tax breaks for those donations.
I think most people would be outraged. This is many millions of dollars that could otherwise be benefiting Canadians.
That was Ioana Roumeliotis with the Fifth Estate. The Prince Andrew Virginia Giuffre scandal is back in the public eye with this week's publication of an extract from Giuffre's posthumous memoir. More now from the CBC's Susan Ormiston.
These aren't new direct allegations in the book Nobody's Girl, the memoir written by Virginia Giuffre, who says she had sex with Prince Andrew as a teenager. But she adds lots of detail and a sad, sobering narrative of her early life in the salacious web of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. It again unearths her accounting of sex with the Duke of York, the first time, she says, in a London home when she was 17. In her book, writing that he was friendly enough, but still entitled, as if he believed having sex with me was his birthright, she said. Afterwards, she says he thanked her in a clipped British accent, and the next morning, Ghislaine Maxwell told her that the prince had had fun and that Epstein would give her £15,000. Giuffre was one of the most prominent accusers of Epstein, whom she says passed her along to male friends and peers for sex, including royalty. She ultimately sued Prince Andrew for sexual assault, which he settled out of court 3 years ago for an undisclosed amount. Epstein died in prison in New York. Maxwell is serving a 20-year sentence in the U.S. for sex trafficking. And last April, Giuffre took her own life in Australia. She was 41. This memoir was released with the support of her family, who spoke to media last month.
Her story is not over. We will continue her legacy, and we will not back down until justice is served.
This scandal has swirled around the prince for years. In 2019, in a BBC interview, he denied almost everything about it.
I can absolutely categorically tell you it never happened.
Do you recall any kind of sexual contact with Virginia Roberts then or any other time?
None whatsoever.
But this does raise his denial and all the questions once again. And in the last week, reports of other emails allegedly between the prince and Jeffrey Epstein. One reading, "We're in this together," which suggests, if authentic, that the Duke of York was closer to Epstein than he has previously admitted. He's no longer a working royal. He's lost his HRH title. There have been calls in Britain to strip Andrew of his other titles, such as the Duke of York. That would require Parliament to step in. There has been no reaction and none expected from the Duke's office regarding the publishing of this memoir. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, London.
The weather update is brought to you by BC Cancer Foundation. Give today to bring more progress and possibilities to patients and their families. Your donation changes everything.
Darius Madavi is here with the BC Wide Weather Forecast and on the Aurora Beat.
That's right.
What is that?
That is a sunspot, 4246 to be exact.
I thought 4247, but you know what? You're the scientist.
I know. Great name. Very catchy.
They're working on it.
Yeah. This has been producing a lot of solar flare activity. It's been very active in recent days. And a couple days ago, it released 3 CMEs, coronal mass ejections, back to back. A coronal mass ejection, those are those giant collections of charged particles that the sun will sometimes release, often after a solar flare. And when those reach Earth, often a couple days later, they can interact with our magnetic field and produce a beautiful aurora. Now here is 4246 right here. You can see the dark spots in the sun there. That indicates a lot of activity. And tonight would be a pretty good night for an aurora to happen because we have a crescent moon. That means very little moonlight polluting the sky. If you can get out of a city, very little light pollution coming down from above. Unfortunately, the skies aren't cooperating too much in most places. Over the next few hours, we may see some clearing in parts of the central and southern interior, so hopefully we'll get some good photos there. If the aurora does happen, things have to line up really well, like Earth's magnetic field has to line up with the charged particles that are coming in. It's really hard to forecast northern lights, to be honest with you, so fingers crossed we get some good photos coming out of it, because here on the south coast, we're probably not going to see much. Now, what we are going to see is some more rain moving in. We have several low pressure systems that are going to be rolling into the coast, a few of them visible there. We're really opening up the storm track for the end of October, so expect a lot more rainy days ahead. Some of those strong winds are going to be making their way to the coast, so expect wind gusts up to potentially 90 kilometers per hour for the central coast and North Island. For more southern areas, probably gusting up to 60. That's probably going to be happening tomorrow and then repeating again on Saturday or overnight Saturday to Sunday. Here you can see some of that rain that's going to be coming in. At higher elevation, we're going to be seeing quite a bit of snowfall as well. Then as we get into next week, we're going to see another round of rain moving in. In terms of the totals we're looking at, highest on the central coast, but also a fair amount coming to the island. Snowfall, again, at higher elevations could be quite significant. Let's see the totals. Here we go. You're going to see here on the central coast as much as 70, 80 millimeters of rain. Isolated places, higher elevations, potentially up to 100 millimeters. Sunshine on the way, Dan, for parts of the interior and in the afternoon here in southwestern BC as well. And 5-day forecast, rain.
It's standard.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
She's believed to be Italy's oldest barista. Coming up, a centenarian who's been brewing coffee since the end of the Second World War. You'll want to meet her.
I'm Amy Bell, and this is your CBC Inbox.
On October 29th, join CBC's Lian Young at the 16th Annual Chinese Restaurant Awards, celebrating Chinese culinary brilliance across Canada and Asia. For tickets and more information, visit ChineseRestaurantAwards.com. And never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC's e-newsletter today at cbc.ca/Vancouver Inbox.
If you're thinking about retirement one day, must be nice, let us introduce you to Anna Posi, believed to be Italy's oldest barista. She's 100 years young and has no plans of quitting anytime soon.
Each day before dawn, she gets up to work behind the counter, firing up the old espresso machine, something she's done for more than 8 decades. She began her career in hospitality as a teenager at the end of the Second World War in a family restaurant.
She and her late husband bought their own place in the Italian Alps 65 years ago, and she's been working there ever since. Something else to celebrate, Anna's 101st birthday is in exactly 1 month, November 16th.
Congratulations. That espresso looks really, really
good. I hope I can move that well when I'm 100.
No kidding. You gonna work in a cafe then? In space.
In space. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, our free app, as well as on YouTube and our website, cbc.ca/BC.
And we will have your next local news at 11 o'clock right after the National. And Janella Hamilton will be your host here tomorrow night. Take care.